Of course, I was in Dallas a couple of months ago for the launch of KLIF, one of our great affiliates in that great city of Dallas, who doesn't have too good of a football team, but an excellent basketball team. I'm not just kissing up to them. It happens to be the fact. Last year, the second best team in basketball, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks. Joining us right now is Mark Cuban, and you could see him on Skype if you watch Fox Nation. Mark also founded the Cost Plus Drug Company, dedicated to producing how low-cost versions of high-cost generic drugs. And he's been telling me about how he's working on that. Mark, great to see you.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
And you know I've been talking to you for about a year. When are you going to willing to talk about this drug thing, your innovative way of bringing down the price of drugs? You're not quite ready yet?
No, I'm ready to talk anytime you want, but here
let's talk about politics first. So what made you convinced over the last month, I see you quite visible, that you want to go so hard for the vice president?
I just think she'll be a better president. I just think that her policies are better. I've been very involved with her business policies. I think they're better, particularly for small and medium-sized businesses. I just think she sets a better tone. She's a lot more positive when it comes to dealing with the country. And so those are the things that really make a difference to me. I just think she will be a better president to bring this country together and move us forward.
So I saw you do a one-on-one interview with her. I watched you do it, and you think the $6,000 tax credit will be a big break for families. But in terms of details on almost any proposal, it seems to fall short. And this is the one thing that I thought would keep you on the sideline. This is the vice president's first policy speech. Listen to cut 8.
Sure.
Is a border wall stupid?
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump and that border wall. So remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on, they didn't.
You're agreeing to a bill that would earmark $650 million to continue building that wall.
I pledge that I am going to bring forward that bipartisan bill to further strengthen and secure our border.
So that was a little of the town hall, but just talking about the border in Texas. Every time I go there, whether it's San Antonio, Dallas, or Houston, or Austin, illegal immigration is a huge issue. Doesn't it bother you the way they dropped the ball for the last 3.5 years?
Well, I didn't think it was perfect for certain. And she's basically, by saying that she's going to be enhancing what they're doing at the border, she's saying, you know what, we have to do a better job. But I think the bigger issue when it comes to immigration is deportation. You've heard Stephen Miller and Donald Trump talk about mass deportations. You've heard him talk about rounding people up. You've heard him talk about checkpoints. That's scary. Just think about someone showing up at your job and just dragging people out, or showing up in your neighborhood. So I think when you go through basic immigration, she said, look, we've got to do a better job on the border. She said she signed the Langford bill. She said that she changed the approach to asylum. But the big differentiator between the two is how they deal with deportation. And I think that is enormous.
First thing they're going to do, get the criminals out. Do you know 6 out of every 10 Americans is for deportation of illegal immigrants? The first thing to do is going to get the criminals out. The first thing they're going to do,
said they'll do that.
And they have to bolster up and triple the size of ICE, which he basically said were akin to white supremacy or Nazis when she was a senator.
No, come on, Brian. Come on. Yeah, when she was senator, but when you're representing the People's Republic of California, that's a whole different job than being the president of the United States and representing all Americans. And she's definitely evolved in her positions. So now where we're at today, border crossings are way down, right? She's saying that if you're a criminal and you cross the border illegally, you will be deported. She's also said that crossing the border in and of itself is a crime.
But you realize,
they're pretty much the
Mark,
same.
Here's where I thought your standard would be different. She never tells why she changed her mind. It makes people think if you said something in 2019 and you did nothing for 3.5 years, you're changing your mind because the policies of the other party seem to be where the country is. This is why Trump has a 15-point lead, according to the New York Times, on immigration. And tell me, Todd Bentzman from the Center for Immigration Studies, a senior fellow, said this is the reason why border crossings are down. Cut 27.
The first thing is that the Mexican government cut a deal with the Biden administration almost a year ago to scoop up thousands of immigrants from our border and internally deport them all the way to their southern border with Guatemala and then trap them there behind a military blockade, all the roadblocks. So the buildup down there is unbelievable.
and 2,000 are now coming this way minimum to the border.
Brian, listen to what he said. I think you're misrepresenting what he said. I love what she said, what they're doing. What they're saying, what Kamala said versus this gentleman. So what this gentleman said was, we're not, Kamala put together a policy that said, you have to stay there. You have to stay, and then we'll send you down to a Central American country, wherever you're from, and you can't leave. Now, you're saying that that's just going to create a buildup. Well, she's saying she's increasing the security at the border. So that's a great thing. I think that's something Trump would do.
But, the remain in Mexico is what Trump did. This is hide them in Guatemala until after the election. That was the point.
No, you're presuming it's till after the election. That's not the case. In fact, Microsoft did a deal with them down there in Mexico where they created 250,000 jobs.
Really?
They're doing things to give, yes, for sure. And so they're giving them ways to stay down there. It sounds like a great program to me.
By the way,
you can't assume they're just going to come.
Oh, they're going to come. 8 million people came after the last 3.5 years, disturbing almost every major city in the country. Would you also agree that sanctuary cities have to go in this country? And if she was serious about it, she would have said the first thing we got to do is get rid of sanctuary cities, because you can't deport the criminals if they're here, if they're in a sanctuary city. That's Chicago, that's New York, that's San Francisco, that is Los Angeles, that's Philadelphia.
But now you hear those cities themselves talking about what they're going to do and their changes to their approach. And so she said she would work with them, and that's the right thing to do. Donald Trump talks about that all the time.
But Mark, if you just talk about performance, you're all about, I watch you, I got a chance to know you, you're all about execution. Trump said that in 2017, end of sanctuary cities, the courts stopped them. She's saying, in theory, I will do something I haven't done for 3.5 years or recommended that Trump brought up in 2017 with the sanctuary cities.
Right. But see, that brings up a good point, right? Kamala Harris says she's going to do something. Yeah, it's changed.
She never said a word about sanctuary cities, by the way. You're saying that.
No, what I'm saying is she said she's talked to the mayors of those cities, right? She's not come out and said specifically, you're right. But at the same time, she said she's not going to just let people cross the border. She said it's a crime if you cross the border. She said if you're break the law beyond just crossing the border, you will be deported.
But she hasn't. But she's never said anything like that. Do you know Mayorkas said the border wasn't even a problem for 3 years? And if you don't want to use the term czar, go ahead, you can go do that. But she was in charge. She was given the same thing that Joe Biden as vice president was. And you know what both Joe Biden did as vice president? He actually flew to those countries and put pressure, and nobody put more pressure than the Trump people. But I do want to talk about the economy, unless you want to say something else.
Real quick, two things. One, she did put pressure. That's why they're staying down there. Two, she has said, if you haven't been here 5 years, you got to leave. So the real question is, what do you do with the... Yes. She's come out and said, you have to be here 5 years. You don't get automatic citizenship. Touch soil is no longer to be the case when she signed the Langford bill. And then how you deal with deportations is everything for the economy and for it, because she understands that we can't have mass deportations. We can't have door knocks. We can't have checkpoints to get people out of the country.
Believe me, it'll take 2 years to get the criminals out before we even can look at people that are just staying here, working in kitchens illegally, or delivering your food on Uber Eats.
But even in 2 years, you don't want to have a complete disruption of the country.
But I think that for the American people, I think two things. Trump has even talked about this. More work visas and more legal immigration.
Sure,
but the illegals got to go. But can we talk about another area of your expertise is the economy. The Trump tax cuts are about to evaporate. If they don't get renewed, they're just going to go away. Are you for that, getting the corporate rate up to 35%? All the income tax brackets have benefited. On average, Americans making between $15,000 and $50,000 received a tax cut of between 16 and 26%. All those making $50,000 to $100,000 received a tax break of 15 to 17%. Are you for letting the Trump tax reform evaporate?
So I'm for the approach. I'm for the approach that Vice President Harris is taking. What she has said is that anybody making under $400,000, their taxes will not go up, and for 100 million of those people, their taxes will go down. And that applies also to
not unless she does something now. She's got to do something.
Well, of course, she's got to do something. All Donald Trump's programs, he's got to do something as well. But she has said that, and realize that of the 33 million companies in this country, 99% of them are passed through. So for 99% of the CEOs and the entrepreneurs that are out there, that make $400,000 or less, their taxes are only going to stay the same or go down. And to me, that's a great policy.
When you look at the when you say pass through, what is that?
So if you have a subchapter S company, if you have a limited liability, a solo entrepreneur, a sole proprietorship, what that means is it's your personal taxes that are taxed. Your business taxes are taxed as if they're your personal taxes.
Okay.
And so
So
that everybody, that means almost every business in the country is going to benefit.
So if you just look at performance, unless she just wants to say I had nothing to do and Joe Biden never look at me, because when pressed about performance, she's like, I'm vice president. When say what she's going to do, while I wasn't there, I'm brand new. When pressed what she did as senator, don't count that. Count what I did as attorney general when it comes to being tough on the border, but don't count what I did on vice president. So it's hard to keep up. But when it comes to performance, if you're going to judge the administration, 401ks lost an average of 9%. $12,000 just because of inflation. And if you could say
no. Now you're manipulating numbers, Brian.
No, go
you're
ahead.
manipulating numbers right now.
Tell me what I did wrong.
I mean, because most people's 401ks have stocks, and the stocks are setting record highs every single day. And you're seeing the median net worth of the country go up significantly. And you're seeing real wages increase beyond inflation now. So you're seeing people's 401ks go up, and that's a great thing.
But not as it relates to inflation. They said if you take inflated rate, you say 401ks adjusted for inflation lost $12,000 or 9%. The growth was 11,000.
And who published that, Brian? Who and when did they publish that? Because with the record highs now, I'm just telling you that data is wrong.
Okay, it was from my brain room because I asked for everything. The other thing is, no, our brain room's great.
They're amazing. I don't discount that at all.
So the pandemic hits and there's a lot of spending. I got it. But even though Jason Furman, Steve Ratner, and Larry Summers came out and said we don't need the rescue package, she did it, or he did it, and she did it, whatever you want to decide. So trillions of dollars goes into the economy, and that was the beginning of rapid inflation. And then you got the Inflation Reduction Act, which they laughed at and said it really wasn't inflation reduction. It's actually a portion of the new Green Deal. Now, I can't believe that Mark Cuban would say that these are good moves. And if you're looking to see if past his prologue, you would think that she's going to do more of this, and how the role that played in all prices going up 20% on her reign. Your thoughts?
So, sure, a couple of things. One, that wasn't the start of inflation. So that's not correct.
When did inflation start?
So inflation really started back in April of 2020. Remember right at the beginning of the pandemic when there was all lockdowns, the price of gas was $1.85 everywhere, and prices seemed to be going lower. At that point in time, the oil companies went to Donald Trump, who was president at the time, and said, look, it's not sustainable for us to have oil prices as low as they are. They were at record lows, and we even saw negative oil prices for a while. And what they asked Donald Trump to do, and Donald Trump did, was go to Saudi Arabia and Russia and say, look, you guys have to reduce your production, because if you don't, then our oil industry is going away. And as it turns out, the oil industry would have got pandemic money anyways, PPP money. But he said, okay, let's do this deal. He went to Putin and MBS and said, please reduce production. They did. And that was, I'm not saying it's the full cause of inflation, but that was when inflation started. Because when you reduce the production, right, and demand starts to grow as more people leave their houses, the price of gas goes up quickly. So the point being that Donald Trump had the choice between helping the oil companies or keeping gas prices low for the American people. He chose to help the oil companies. That was the beginning of inflation.
Well, here's the thing. If you're a guy that became a billionaire for a reason, because you're great with numbers. When he was when he left office, inflation was at 1.9%. If you say that happened in May, so you're saying it was a rubber band? And the rubber band pulled back and they just let go when Trump left office? You don't think they're putting $2 trillion into in 2021 when Biden took over, and the $7 trillion he put in, that we basically had to put toner into a printer?
No, you're right. That when Biden continued to spend, that definitely influenced inflation considerably. But you asked the question, when did it start? And so on one hand, Donald Trump says, look, we're drill. We're going to cut the price of gas, and that's going to reduce everything else. The opposite also works. When you when you take it the other way, it influences inflation,
Mark,
and that was the start of inflation.
My
literally.
opinion, Mark, if you would have to be Secretary of Treasury, we shouldn't look at the back of her baseball card to know what kind of president she'll be. Real quick, taxing unrealized capital gains. So that means for laymen, if I have a great IP, if I have a great stock and I got this great company, I don't have any cash, but the tax bill is due, I got to cash in my stock. You can't sign off on that, right?
No, of course not. And I've said that many, many times. Let me just give you the history of that real quick. That was in Joe Biden's 2024 budget. It has never been proposed by anybody. So when somebody in the Harris campaign said, we support Joe Biden's budget, they didn't get into details. And so Kamala comes along and says, literally, Joe Biden wanted a 34.5% or 44% income tax. She's picked 28%. Joe Biden wanted a higher capital gains tax. She picked 28%. When it comes to unrealized capital gains, I'm telling you, Brian, that is not going to happen.
It was in her original speech, Mark, when she said,
she's
in August, I think.
And she said, I support Joe Biden and things he done. And then everybody took and ran with that. They ignored the fact that Joe Biden's corporate tax proposals were far higher than Kamala's. Right. Joe Biden's capital gains tax was far higher than Kamala's.
Mark, I would tell you what, I would feel great in any country and any administration with you handling the money and the innovation, the entrepreneurship. I just wish she was more like the person that you're describing. But I always love talking to you, and we're going to do it on television next week, okay?
You got it. That's the deal.
You got it. Brian Kilmeade back in a moment. Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.